So this is Steve, and I'm here with John Crawford. John, you're running for city council
Yes.
again at large.
Right.
Uh, Tell me about why you're running.
Well, I had 12 years on council, and last time I wasn't reelected, and I was kind of trying to decide if I wanted to run again. I'd say the main thing that made me get really interested and fired up to running again was the shift as far as the spectrum of where we are as a lot of government versus not enough government versus just the right amount at the national level. In other words, over the last few years, I think we have, at the national level, way increased taxes too much, way went into debt too much, increased government regulation too much. We have shifted far to the too much government side, in my estimation. So I'm always been the minimum amount of government necessary and the minimum amount of taxes, minimum amount of regulation necessary. So whatever I can do at the local level to shift that needle back a little bit, I think it's important to bring the country more back in balance. Because even though some of the things they did at the national level might have been necessary at some of the economic crisis times, I think they have sown seeds of the next economic crisis. I think, for example, debt is totally out of control. We have printed a ton of money, and I think that'll lead to a sort of a great stagflation. In a couple of years, we'll have very little growth, and yet inflation at the same time, like we did in the 70s. Very difficult cycle to break. And the national government will have to cut the money to the states, who will have to cut the money to the cities. So I think we're going to have a rough time in 2 or 3 years because of some of the things we've done at the national level. And you have to have people at the local level that are able to adapt to those changes and the ability to make necessary cuts and the ability to say no sometimes. The hardest thing in being in government is saying no. It's very easy to say yes. Usually people at the table come and they want something. If you say yes, you're a great hero. If you say no, then you better be ready with your arguments because you're an evil person for saying no. So saying no is hard. You have to really do your research and know what you're talking about. Saying yes is easy, but saying yes is what's gotten us into this tremendous debt at the national level.
Mm-hmm. And let's back up just a little bit. You ran back in 95, were elected in 95 to city council,
Right.
Served 3 terms, 12
Right.
years.
Right.
Why don't you tell us a little bit more background, a little bit about yourself, maybe for those who don't know you?
Okay, well, I'm a physician. I work with cancer patients. And I got interested in politics way back when, helping some of other people run. I got involved in Mayor Helke's first campaign, got involved in Mark Souder's first congressional campaign, and just got interested in it. And so, well, that's kind of interesting. I think I'll go to some campaign schools and learn a little bit more about it, and got interested myself, and that's why I ran. And so I did not win the first time I ran. I ran in 91 and lost. And then I said, well, I better go to some more campaign schools. So I went to some more, and then actually the first time I ran, I lost by 100 votes or something like that, actually. And the second time when I ran, after learning all kinds of stuff, doing twice the effort, I won by 25 votes. So at large can sometimes be very, very close. And a lot of times it goes how the mayor's race go, until you get your own name recognition and your own following. So anyway, ran again in 95, elected 3 times, and then last time I was not successful. I lost by 100 votes. But the election in 2000 and I guess 7 was particularly aberrant. When you're running city council at large as a Republican, it really doesn't help when the Republican candidate for mayor is under indictment, okay? I mean, it's just not a good thing. And when the Republican candidate loses 60-40, like it happened last time, a lot of those people just didn't show up, the Republican voters. So you lost a lot of people who just were disgusted with the Republican candidate being under indictment. They just didn't show up. And a lot of the people that didn't show up were the moderate Republicans, which are more people that would be more in tune with me. The people that did show up on the Republican side were more some of the far-right Republicans who might have disagreed with me on my votes on smoking ordinance or Harrison Square or some of the more moderate positions I've taken. And then we also had several libertarians run in last time. And the libertarians tend to take votes away from the Republicans rather than Democrats. So the main reason I think I lost was the mayoral candidate being under indictment, libertarians siphoning off some, and then between the smoking ordinance and Harrison Square, they probably neck and neck for third and fourth. So we kind of had a perfect storm last time. Because the previous time, having done pretty much the smoking ordinance before and a lot of other things, I was the leading at-large candidate. So it was just a funny election. So it didn't really upset me or anything, because sometimes you learn more by losing an election than you do by winning an election. So in the time I have not been on council, kind of had some time to reflect on some of the votes I made and kind of figure, well, how could I do that a little better? And the one vote I wish I could take back was the Public Safety Academy. Because when Mayor Richard proposed that, it was proposed as a public-private partnership, had a very strong board lined up with Pete Eshelman, Joe Ruffalo. They were committed and enthused about raising private money, and actually had like $500,000 worth of donors lined up to help each year. So we had a public-private partnership, and with that economic model, we could pretty much run it without losing much money and have us a nice new training academy. So I voted for it with some trepidation. If it had stayed that model, it was a good vote. But as soon as Mayor Henry came in, he blew up the board, got rid of the guy who was running it, and all of a sudden we have a $500,000 white elephant on our hands. And we've got people on the board like the mayor of Bluffton and this and that. They're not that committed to raising money for Fort Wayne, and they don't have that many people who would give to Fort Wayne. So I wish I could take that back. And what I learned was be much more skeptical in starting big projects. Be much more skeptical that what you're voting for is what's going to be that way a year later. So I would not vote for something like that again, on the idea that, you know, just like the prospectus for an investment might look good, what are all the bad things that could happen? Another vote that I think I would like to modify a little bit on the Harrison Square issue, I think I would like to go back and have insisted on a performance bond on the developer to develop the condos. Some people discussed that at that time, so that might be a deal breaker because it'd be more expensive for them and that, but I think I kind of accepted that, and also accepted, oh, well, these people, we've checked them out and they can do this even if the economy goes sour and this and that. Well, it turns out they couldn't. So if you'd had a performance bond, and if you had been more skeptical, that would have helped, I think.